Hi, everyone. Welcome to March Supper Club. We are working our way through a series called Reimagining Wellbeing. This is based on Dr. Jason Whitehead's adult ed series that he did here at the church. And we're looking at some specific areas of well-being. We've done your spiritual life and your physical life, those aspects of our well-being. And this month, we are looking at our mental well-being. Dr. Whitehead, in his talk, which we'll put a link to that, set out some nice language for us to frame all of this. He talked about mental well-being as almost your ideal, like how you would love to show up in the world in your mental best. Mental health, though, is a little more your baseline of how you typically show up. And as long as you're hitting, he talked about a wavy line of your baseline, which I thought was helpful. In other words, you're not going to show up feeling great every day.
All the time.
Yeah, but if you can kind of stay close to that baseline, then you're having an okay time. And if you dip too far for too long below that, then it might be time to get some help. Yeah, and then he had another phrase, another term that he said was new to him too, called mental fitness, that he had learned recently, which is really about raising that baseline. So not just trying to stay at your baseline, but what are the things you can do to increase your resilience in the world, your sense of well-being. And I thought that was helpful. So it's a good setup.
Such a good conversation, given the pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
Our mental health has taken a hit as a people, as individuals. We know that that statistically, there are lots of statistics about how mental health has been impacted in terms of anxiety disorders and stress and depression and other manifestations of a mental health baseline taking a dip. And we know that stress during the pandemic has impacted the way that we respond to the world in our relationships and in our work life and in our family life. And stress is okay if it helps us to live and stay alert and do what we need to do. But if it's constant and chronic and we live in this way that we are vigilant because we are afraid and life keeps changing and we feel like we can't control it. I know for me, and I know for you too, we have talked this past week with the Russia's invasion in the Ukraine, that this has brought another level of not just stress, but tremendous anxiety and sadness. And I think we have a new sphere to have to navigate in our mental health. And
you and I have talked about the challenge of wanting to stay, watching the news, staying connected with what's going on as a way of staying informed, first of all, but staying connected to the suffering. That feels important to our faith and our well-being at one level. And knowing if you're glued to that TV all of the time, those cortisone levels and all that that you were talking about, the stress levels, you never get a chance to. So what's the balance between stepping away from the world of suffering to build yourself back up or get back to that baseline?
Right.
Especially when something like this happens in the world, I find it really
such trauma,
really difficult to know.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've had a really hard week with this. I am losing some sleep. It's really impacted me surprisingly more than I would imagine. And I'm having a really hard time separating myself from the television or from news sources, which is not helping with the anxiety. But I don't want to pull away either because I don't feel like it's responsible. So I know we all feel like that.
You and I respond a little bit. You tend to go toward it.
Yeah.
And I tend to, go away from it in a way that I feel the opposite of I'm not connected enough and feel the guilt around that, or that I'm not being responsible enough. And where's the balance for all this? It's tricky. So,
that's why you talk to me, and I tell you everything.
What's going on?
And I talk at you about it.
So with mental health, we think one of the things to talk about here at the church is how does our faith help with keeping us at that baseline or even increasing that baseline. And we do think our faith can be really helpful in lots of ways. And maybe even if you weren't a person of faith, you're still going to want to have a sense of greater connection. One of the things that connects us to something greater than us, a sense of that we are a part it's not we're not alone in the world.
Right.
That can be really helpful when we're feeling, I think one of the real challenges for mental health is the more we're not doing well, the more we feel isolated, the more we feel disconnected, and it starts to build on itself. And so a
Right.
community of faith can be a real antidote to that, whether it's just community, too, just being people that you can be with in faith, to support each other, to not feel so alone. There's some really important gifts
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, for mental well-being, we know that relationships and the social safety network, as you said, that you don't feel isolated and alone. During the pandemic, one of the hardest things that we've experienced
That's
is
right.
so much isolation. But a church community or faith community offers you a safety net in that way, a place to land.
Yeah. And a place to serve, which is a way that we can together go out and help with some of the suffering in the world, which I think, one, gives us something to do so that we feel like we're doing something, say something like Ukraine, just watching this unfold and we feel so isolated and helpless from it, that what can we do together to help? But it also gets us connected with others and out of a kind of self-reflective bubble that we get in of
That's
just
right.
worrying about ourselves, and it can
Right.
start to build on itself. We just turn the gaze outward toward others and
Other
helping
focus.
is a really helpful thing.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, our spiritual practices that our traditions teach us in religious traditions, but also if you're not in a religious tradition, we know that meditation, breathing practices, contemplation, of course, prayer, that calm us and center us. Journaling is a practice that helps get out thoughts and feelings that you may not be aware are going on internally, and brings them forth, puts them forth. So those are ways that we can get at feelings, emotions, anxieties that increase our possibility for raising our mental fitness, I think.
And then just the practical things, it sounds so trite in some ways, but really for your mental health, eating well, getting enough sleep, getting the exercise you need,
Yep.
and being self-aware enough to know when things aren't, before it gets too bad, we've got to do some work to reduce the stigma around mental health issues, and being willing to say, I'm having a tough time, whether that's
Right.
to a friend or to a mental health professional.
Or to a clergy person.
Or a clergy person, yeah.
To let us know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, one of the healthiest attempts at raising our mental fitness and our well-being is to really believe we are beloved, and we have a core purpose in this world, and that this world would not be the same without us. Right.
Yeah, so that's why we keep saying it every Sunday, so we can all come back and be reminded of that deep truth.
Yeah.
Some questions for you for your discussion. One, think about or talk about that balance between staying engaged in the news cycle and the being in touch with the suffering versus taking time for yourself. How do you find that balance? Where do you struggle? I think there's some rich wisdom I'm sure you can share around that.
2, what areas of your life create the greatest challenges for your mental health? Maybe that's in relationships or your employment, or just, some family stuff, or however. What are
All
those
different,
spheres
yeah.
in your life that may create your challenges?
And if you want, you could then talk about the things that actually help you, that you find are really helpful in your mental well-being, things that boost that baseline, that help you get higher. Share some wisdom around what works for you.
Yes. We wish you well. This is an important topic. We take it seriously, but let us repeat, we are not mental health professionals. If you need support, please let us know.
Yeah. All right. Have a great discussion. We'll see you.